Welcome to the Writer Reads Short Stories. This one is of Heart and Hearth, Part 3. No, he said, you'll burn your tongue and frizzle your whiskers. The kitten hissed, the exchange reminding him of conversations he'd had with his own familiar before she'd been taken from him. And there'll be no more of that, he said, responding as he would have responded to Diamond, by shaking the ladle in his general direction. His mother placed a tiny square of bread in front of it, barely pulling her fingers away in time to avoid the tiny creature's sudden pounce. "Anyone would think you hadn't been fed in a donkey's age," she said. The kitten made growling noises as it feasted. Yardley sighed and went back to serving the stew. "You know it's not hygienic to have a cat in the middle of the table, don't you?" he said, and his mother shot him a withering glance. "I'm not the one who put him there," she replied tartly. "Poor little prince." She had a point, so Yardley contented himself with carrying their bowls to the table, then fetching the kitten's. Although he'd said it would have to wait for its meal to cool, it was nothing to twiddle a little bit of ice magic around the bowl's base to bring the stew to the right temperature. He'd had plenty of practice doing just that with the kitten's predecessor. The thought made him halt, and he almost left the ice too long. There is no way he's Diamond's successor, he told himself. None. Damn, he muttered, noticing the bowl's temperature. A quiet lick of magical flame soon equalized things, and he set the bowl and a carefully placed tea towel before it. The tiny creature had to put its forepaws on the rim to reach over the edge. Yardley solved that problem by an astutely placed pile of books atop which he set the kitten. "There," he said, and when he saw it was securely settled and happily lapping at its meal, he sat. "You know it's not hygienic to feed a cat from a human bowl," his mother quipped, and Yardley laid a hand over his heart. "You wound me." The thunder crashed, and something echoed it by crashing against his front door. Yardley's little house shook. "That sounded like a knock," his mother observed. "What from? A half-giant?" Yardley asked as the kitten shot across the table and clawed its way back inside his shirt. "Do your buttons up and close your jacket," his mother advised, "and pray he doesn't fall past your belt line." "I could just put him in my jacket pocket," Yardley suggested, but the kitten wriggled away from his hand, digging its needle-sharp claws into his waist as it went. "Cat, you and me are going to talk when this is done." The kitten reached his hip and turned, settling atop his belt and gripping it through the shirt. It looked like his tiny passenger didn't want to end up falling any further either. "Fine," he grumbled, buttoning his shirt and closing his jacket, and trying to avoid his mother's "I told you so" look as he did. The knocking came again, this time sounding less oversized and more like a human-sized, magically enhanced imperative, which, now he thought about it, made him aware of the magic floating through the air around him, and the heavier concentration of it by the door. "Which," he concluded, then caught another scent, one more akin to stagnant pools and rotting vegetation. Hag? The kitten was a small dead weight at his hip, like a tiny holstered taser that he didn't dare let anyone know he had. Yardley walked a little faster, trying to reach the staff he'd left by the door. Hags wouldn't hesitate to use a half-giant to knock at his door, and he'd been joking when he'd said one might have knocked, although hags were known to keep company with them, and their full-grown counterparts as well. "Remind me never to joke about that kind of thing ever again," he told himself. "Fine, never joke about half-giants at the door again," his inner voice warned. "What would I do without you?" Yardley muttered as he turned the key and opened the door. The woman standing on what was left of his front stoop was as slender as a snake, had vivid flame-colored hair peeking out from beneath her pointed broad-brimmed hat, and eyes as black as pitch, all pupil. Her skin was as pale as newly sprung grass, and she had a bone structure a model would kill for, as well as lips that formed a dark green bow. In short, she was stunning. even rain-drenched and wind-blown in a gown that clung like a second skin, or especially in a gown that clung like a second skin. Yardley got the impression she liked it that way. The broom she held in one hand was redundant in marking her for what she was. Not all witches were evil, but hags invariably leant that way, and this one looked to be no exception. No wonder the ravens were aflight, he thought. They weren't watching me, but this. The local wizards and witches would not have let such an abomination fly unattended over their lands. They'd want to know why she'd come and where she was going. The woman waited, as though expecting him to invite her in. The half-troll stood behind her, watchful, guarding her back against the hostilities of an unknown land. Yardley noted he bore enough of a semblance to mark him as family, although to what degree he didn't know. "He's my son," the woman said, tracking Yardley's eyes, "and he's lost his kitten. You haven't seen it, have you?" Yardley's jaw dropped, and she gave an impatient sigh. Taking a step, she moved as though to push past him, but Yardley ground his staff between them. Runes sparkled through the grain of the timbered veranda, the spell having rendered it invulnerable to the half-troll's assault. They flared in denial as he spoke again. "You do not have permission," he declared, his words triggering the wards. His visitor stopped like she hit a wall. "The cat?" she demanded, her voice harsh with annoyance as she reminded him why she'd come. The half-troll ran his eyes along the remains of the veranda, as though trying to decide which part to demolish next, then sniffed. "Is here," he rumbled, sniffing again for emphasis and turning unerringly toward Yardley. Before he could take another sniff, Yardley fixed him with a steely gaze. "You do not have permission to touch, harm, destroy, or have any effect on that which is mine," he stated, following it up with, "Neither you nor yours have permission to enter my territories or grounds." The woman smirked. "A bit late, aren't you, Master Wizard? For I am already here." Yardley waited for the magic to fling her back to whence she'd come, but she peered past him into the depths of the house. "And a bit alone, are you not? A wizard without his familiar is only half a man." Her lips stretched into a mocking smile, and she reached out a finger to tap him on the nose. "A wizard without a familiar hasn't the power to challenge me." That might be true, but Yardley felt something stirring at his hip. The kitten. He felt something feathering around the gap Diamond had left when she'd gone up in smoke. But he didn't relent. "I don't want another familiar," snarled through his head. It helped that the gap was filled with memories. Diamond as a kitten, black as coal with lamp-bright eyes, her gaze like orange flame. Diamond adding a strategic paw print to a student's homework. Diamond leaving 5 parallel claw marks across a chimera's snout, drawing its attention long enough for him to recover, but not long enough for him to save her. Cats can only move so fast. Yardley had ensured the creature died in a storm of lightning and fire, immolating it and Diamond's remains. The cat had danced away in a constellation of stars, her spirit promising to hunt the other lands until he came to build a home and create a hearth for her to sleep on. That promise sealed the gap against the kitten's attempt at bonding. And I overlooked its power, he thought, his stomach turning at the idea of the hag gifting such energy to her son. Perhaps that is why he has a mind.